Hello guys and welcome into this lesson, and in this lesson we are going to talk about loops in JavaScript. What are loops in basic programming languages? Loops are basically features that only facilitate or the execution of a set of instructions repeatedly while a certain condition evaluates to true. In JavaScript, we have two types of loops. We have entry controlled and then exit controlled loops. What are entry controlled loops? This is basically a type of loop that tests condition before entering the loop body. For example, we have the for loop and then we have the while loop. In exit controlled loop, we have only the condition is tested at the end of the loop. In JavaScript, we have several kinds of loops. We have the for loop, for in, for off, while, and then the do while loop. For the for loop, this tests through a block of code a number of times. And in the for in loops are only tested, they are only applicable in objects. The for op, they are only used in iterable objects. The while loops, these are loops that loop through a block of code while specified conditions are true. Then the do while, we have these loops only execute a block of code while specified condition again is true. We can look at our first loop, and then that is the while loop. When we check at this diagram here, we can see that we have our condition that enters here, or that in our entry. Then we have the statement or the block of code that should be printed out, or the result. If that condition is true, then it loops all through the number of times and then prints out up to the final loop. We can look at a simple syntax here of the while loop. This syntax, we always start with the while loop. Then we have the boolean condition that we are testing. Then here we have the loop body. For example, this is an example of this while loop. We have to assign our variable here, define our variable, and then assign our variable 1 here. While our condition here, this is the condition that we are testing. If or while x is less than or equal to 4, then execute this line of code here, or this block of code here. Then say the value of x is then plus x, and then you break this to the next line. And then after that, you have to increment this. Why are you incrementing this? It will loop from the first loop, second loop, all the way to the final loop. And then our output will be basically from 1 up to 4. We can check at the for loop. Our for loop, we can check at this diagram here, and in our for loop we have the loop entry. Then we test our condition here, and if the condition is false, then our program is terminated. And if our condition is true, evaluates, then loops all the way to the final loop, and then it executes or terminates your program. We can look at a basic example of a for loop here. And in for loop, we have to initialize a condition here. Then after that, we have to test our condition here, and then increment this in one line, and then execute this block of code inside here. When you look at this example here, you can define your variable x here. Then this is a comment saying that the for loop begins when x is equal to 2, and then runs till the value of x is less than or equal to 4. For example, this is the for loop. Initialize your condition here, then assign this x to 2. Then x is less than or equal to 4, then increment your loop here. Then if these conditions are met, then execute this line of code here. Let's look at our final loop, that is the do while loop. The do while loop, this is an example of exit controlled loop, meaning that the condition is tested the last thing. Here we have a start of our program. Then if this program loops and checks our body here, then here test our condition. If this condition is true, goes again to the loop body, goes again to the loop body up to the end of the loop, and then terminates or ends our program. We can look at the example of this do loop here. This is the syntax. You use the do keyword here, then the block of statement, and then we test our condition at the last thing. For example, here we have our variable, and then we have assigned this value to value of 21. Then do a specific task. The line this line, while a printer is even, then if the condition is false, execute or terminate our program, and it will print this: the value of x is equal to plus, then you break to the next line, and then you increment here. What if, while this program will only execute the desired output if this condition of x is less than or equal to 20, and then our output will be the value of x is equal to 21. That's it when it comes to JavaScript loops. Let's meet in the next lesson.